the blue suit files.
Yeah.
Technical Sergeant Promotion Cycle. Condensed analysis of Level B and Level C sections.
Right.
You are processing this data stream because you are a technical sergeant candidate. So consider a scenario. A $5,500 piece of testing equipment vanishes from your work center.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, your base pay is garnished, your security clearance is flagged, and your career progression is permanently stalled. Why? Well, because you failed to interface with a single paragraph of Department of the Air Force Instruction 362908.
Exactly. You operate within the United States Air Force.
Yeah.
And this functions as a rigid, interconnected operational machine.
There is no space in this analysis for, warm greetings or casual bantering. The sole purpose of this deep dive is to map the United States Air Force as an organizational apparatus.
And to detail your specific mandatory function within it.
Yeah.
Because as a technical sergeant, you are the diagnostic interface of this machine.
You are the critical threshold.
Right, between policy formulation and actual physical execution. Failure to understand and apply these regulations does not result in a simple operational mistake. I mean, it results in administrative wreckage.
It results in mission failure?
Precisely. Ignorance of the established parameters leads to systemic degradation, and the system is designed to penalize degradation with absolute precision. You might be assessing administrative tasks, like travel vouchers or database updates, as minor collateral duties.
Which is a fatal error.
A massive error. Recalibrate that assumption immediately. Today, we map the exact mechanics of how your oversight dictates the survival of the unit.
Acknowledged. The rules of engagement for this analysis are strict. Every acronym, initialism, and date presented represents a rigid operational constraint, or a functional milestone.
They will be defined upon first use, analyzed for systemic intent, and processed without deviation.
We begin with the Level B block. This is the understanding phase, defined by relationship logic. We must map how the machine acquires, distributes, and retains its human capital.
Right.
The macro logic of Chapter 10 dictates a fundamental reality that you must internalize. The United States Air Force does not move people.
It absolutely does not.
It fulfills valid manpower requirements, and it bases those on an Air Force Specialty Code, or AFSC, and skill levels. Within this logic, technical sergeants are utilized to fill 7 skill-level positions.
And that distinction is paramount to your new operational reality. A 5-skill-level asset executes the mission. They turn the wrench, they write the code, they pull the trigger.
But a 7-skill-level asset, the technical sergeant manages the execution.
Exactly. The assignment system does not view you as an individual with personal preferences. It views you as a 7-skill-level requirement to be mapped against a global deficit.
So when a base in a contested theater requires a 7-level manager to oversee 50 5-level executors, the system searches its database for a matching node.
You are that node.
Which means we must audit the primary assignment mechanism. Equal, the enlisted quarterly assignments listing.
Right. Equal.
Equal provides a listing of assignment requirements available for upcoming cycles. The stated goal is to align personal preferences to actual Air Force needs by AFSC and grade. But I am assessing a structural vulnerability here.
Go ahead.
The text issues a clinical warning. Each airman is individually responsible for the currency and accuracy of their assignment preferences.
Yeah.
The system relies entirely on user input. From a systems perspective, trusting the asset to manually update their own geographic preferences seems highly inefficient and prone to failure.
It is a massive vulnerability, which is exactly why the technical sergeant is inserted as the diagnostic check. I mean, the machine operates on algorithms. If an airman leaves their equal preferences blank or, leaves them populated with outdated data from 4 years ago, the algorithm assumes apathy.
So when a valid requirement drops,
the system will pull an asset who has updated their preferences, or it will simply force distribute a non-volunteer. When your 5-level subordinate comes to you complaining that they received orders to an undesirable location, the first diagnostic step is to check their equal input. If they fail to update it, the machine did not fail them. They failed to interface with the machine.
So your job is to audit their data inputs before the quarterly cycle even runs.
Exactly.
Right. Let's look at how assignment flow is governed. It relies on stability metrics, primarily TOS or time on station. Minimum time on station requirements exist ostensibly to provide continuity to an organization.
Right.
Let's break down the algorithmic constraints. For a first-term airman, the system requires 12 months of time on station to move from the continental United States, or CONUS, to an overseas assignment.
Yeah, just 12 months.
But for career airmen, the system requires 24 months of time on station before an overseas permanent change of station, or PCS.
Doubled.
And then for CONUS to CONUS moves, regardless of career status, the system demands a massive 48 months of time on station.
4 years.
Why does the system demand such rigid timelines? And why the severe disparity between first-term and career assets?
Well, the logic prioritizes fiscal predictability and return on investment. The system spends hundreds of thousands of dollars training a first-term airman.
Right.
The 12-month CONUS to overseas requirement allows the system to rapidly test this raw material, ensuring they are fundamentally viable before spending the logistical capital to shift them across an ocean.
Okay. Conversely, the career airman represents a hardened, highly trained component.
Exactly. So the system demands 24 months before an overseas move because it requires a sustained return on investment at their current location before authorizing another highly expensive relocation.
And the 48-month constraint for CONUS to CONUS movement.
That is the ultimate stabilization protocol. Moving households within the continental United States is a massive drain on the future year's defense program budget.
It's expensive.
Extremely. By locking assets in place for 4 years, the system creates predictable financial forecasting. It also stabilizes the training pipelines. Look, if you constantly rotate 7 skill-level managers, the 5 skill-level executors suffer from inconsistent leadership execution.
So the 48-month wall ensures that a technical sergeant remains in place long enough to actually build a competent team.
Right, rather than constantly cycling through the orientation phase.
Let's process the cancellation window. This is a critical timeline constraint. Once an airman is selected for a PCS and orders are published, assignments are not normally canceled within 60 days of the projected departure date.
That 60-day mark is rigid.
The only acceptable system override is if the airman cannot be effectively used at the projected location. This indicates that at the 60-day mark, the logistical wheels, household goods shipment, housing termination, gaining unit UMD adjustments have locked into place. Reversing them causes unacceptable financial friction.
Precisely. At 60 days, the gaining unit has already forecasted the arrival of that capability. They are planning operational tempo around that asset.
So if you, as the technical sergeant, uncover a medical or administrative issue that disqualifies your subordinate from that assignment,
and you fail to report it until day 45, you have caused a cascading failure. The losing unit has a broken asset, the gaining unit has an unfillable deficit, and the transportation system has wasted funding.
let's examine retention tools disguised as assignment systems. Specifically, joint spouse and base of preference. The joint spouse program considers military couples for assignments where they can maintain a joint residence, provided valid manning requirements exist for both.
Right.
The base of preference, or BOP program, acts as an incentive for continued service. However, there is a rigid operational restriction I must highlight. A PCS base of preference is not authorized from CONUS to overseas, nor is it authorized from overseas to overseas.
Again, we return to the logic of the financial planning cycle. Overseas moves are exponentially more expensive than domestic moves.
They involve international shipping, status of forces agreements,
Overseas housing allowances, dependent travel restrictions, all of it. The base of preference system is designed to retain talent, but the machine will not bankrupt itself to do so.
It restricts overseas BOP movement to prevent the destabilization of the personnel budget.
You can request a favorable location, but you cannot dictate international logistics.
We must map deferment systems next. The machine generally abhors stagnation, but Humanitarian and Exceptional Family Member Program, or EFMP, deferments exist to resolve severe short-term problems.
Right.
Now, I am identifying a contradiction in the source text regarding humanitarian deferments. The text states the problem must be resolvable within a reasonable period of time, normally 12 months.
Yes.
The phrase normally 12 months is highly irregular. It implies a subjective variable. How does a rigid operational machine tolerate subjective timelines?
Well, it tolerates subjectivity only when a highly calibrated algorithm is impossible, which is the nature of human medical or legal crises. The normally 12 months parameter is essentially a commander's override.
Okay.
The system recognizes that forcing a PCS on an asset dealing with the terminal illness of a dependent will result in a 0% execution rate from that asset.
They'd be completely ineffective.
Exactly. The system grants 12 months for the asset to stabilize their personal logistics. But If the situation is not resolvable in 12 months, the system shifts from a deferment posture to an administrative separation posture.
Because the machine cannot absorb indefinite non-deployability.
It simply won't.
The text also defines specific family member parameters to prevent system exploitation, including the initialism in loco parentis.
Right, in place of a parent.
In loco parentis is defined strictly as a person who has exercised parental rights and responsibilities in place of a natural parent for at least 5 years before the airman's or spouse's 21st birthday, or before the airman's entry into the regular Air Force, whichever is earlier. The system requires 5 years of documented history to prevent an airman from suddenly claiming a distant relative as a dependent to manipulate the assignment cycle.
It is an anti-fraud mechanism.
Yeah.
Without that 5-year stipulation, the humanitarian assignment system would be overwhelmed by fraudulent claims designed to circumvent that 48-month time on station requirement.
That makes sense. But how do expedited transfers function within this rigid system of stability metrics? The rules we have mapped so far prioritize the budget and unit continuity above all else.
Expedited transfers represent a deliberate, necessary systemic override.
Okay.
Eligible airmen who file an unrestricted report for sexual assault, stalking, physical domestic violence, or other sexual misconduct receive expedited transfer options. When this trigger is pulled, the logic of the machine shifts entirely
It abandons system stability.
and prioritizes clinical safety.
To facilitate this immediate permanent change of station, the text mandates that all assignment action codes must be removed from the airman's personnel file.
Exactly. The 48-month rule, the 60-day cancellation window, the equal cycle, all of it is instantly purged.
Wow.
The system temporarily dismantles its own operational constraints to physically separate the victim from the alleged offender. The preservation of the human asset and the legal integrity of the investigation supersedes the continuity of the unit.
So as a technical sergeant, you do not debate this timeline.
Never. You facilitate the immediate extraction of the asset.
This philosophical understanding of human capital distribution directly dictates how those assets are categorized. Which brings us to Block 1, Part 2, occupational codes and the special duty infrastructure.
Right.
We shift from analyzing where the human capital is deployed to analyzing what the capital is programmed to execute. The system does not use job titles. It uses an architecture contained within the AFECD, the Air Force Enlisted Classification Directory.
Yes.
The 5-digit enlisted code defines the specific gears of the machine.
We must decode the DNA of the force here. The AFECD is not just a list. It is a philosophy of labor division. The first digit identifies the career group, the fundamental nature of the work.
I will map the macro categories. 1 designates operations. These are the assets directly engaging in the primary combat or intelligence mission.
Tip of the spear.
2 designates logistics. These are the components maintaining the hardware and supply lines.
Right.
3 designates support. These units build the bases, secure the perimeter, and manage the personnel data.
The infrastructure.
4 designates medical or dental, preserving the biological function of the force. 5 designates legal or religious affairs, maintaining discipline and psychological resilience.
Yeah.
6 designates acquisition or finance, managing the fiscal inputs. And 7 designates special investigations, the internal auditing and counter-threat mechanism.
Now, understanding this 1 through 7 architecture is critical for a technical sergeant because it dictates your lateral interactions. Well, when a 3-series support unit fails to process a security clearance, the 1-series operations unit cannot execute the mission, and the 2-series logistics unit cannot order the classified parts. The machine is completely interdependent.
Moving down the code structure. The 2nd digit identifies the career field, the 3rd identifies the career field subdivision, the 4th identifies the skill level, which we have established is the line between 5-level execution and 7-level management, and the 5th identifies the specific AFSC.
Right.
Alpha prefixes and suffixes are appended to denote special qualifications or equipment associated with that specialty. But the standard operational force requires specialized maintenance. This is where the 8-series and 9-series codes are applied.
Yeah.
8 designates special duty identifiers, and 9 designates reporting identifiers.
Focus entirely on the 8-series special duty identifiers, or SDIs. This is where the system analyzes its own performance and attempts to replicate its best features.
SDIs are not standard AFSCs. They are assigned to authorizations for an actual group of tasks performed on a semi-permanent or permanent duty basis. The text relies on the term semi-permanent because the duration of these duties fluctuates based on global posture and recruitment needs.
Right.
I will extract the critical TSGT-eligible SDIs. 8A100 is Career Assistance Advisor. 8B1000 is Military Training Instructor, or MTI. 8B100 is Military Training Leader. 8F1000 is First Sergeant. 8R1000 is Enlisted Accessions Recruiter. And 8T1000 is Professional Military Education Instructor.
Look at the functional grouping of these 8 series codes. MTIs, first sergeants, instructors, recruiters. These are not operational roles. They're developmental special duties.
So they represent the system building its own future architecture.
Exactly. The machine requires constant influxes of raw material, which is the 8R1000 recruiter. It requires that raw material to be aggressively molded into baseline operational components, which is the 8B1000 MTI. And it requires those components to be disciplined and maintained in the field, which is the 8F1000 first sergeant. The system extracts its highest functioning 7 skill-level assets, removes them from their primary AFSC, and repurposes them to manage the manufacturing pipeline.
I noticed structural divergence when analyzing strength management outside the regular Air Force, detailing Air National Guard, or NG, strength management.
Yeah, that's different.
The National Guard Bureau, or NGB, utilizes a completely distinct organizational ecosystem. The PRR is the Production Recruiter Retainer, responsible for executing programs to enlist and retain personnel.
Okay.
The RRM is the Recruiting Retention Manager, responsible for developing annual unit recruiting plans and supervising PRRs. And the RRS is the Recruiting Retention Superintendent, responsible for managerial oversight of all state NG recruiting and retention strength management team programs.
Why this separate apparatus?
Because the NG cannot utilize the standard equal assignment system, or standard 8R1000 recruiters. It operates under different statutory and geographic constraints. Because regular Air Force assets are globally deployable nodes.
Right, whereas NT assets are geographically bound to their specific state unless federally activated. Therefore, the RRS, RM, and PRR form a closed-loop recruitment and retention ecosystem.
They have to drive from their own backyard.
They must extract human capital from their immediate local civilian population and retain it within that specific state's infrastructure. It is a localized micro-machine running parallel to the global macro-machine.
This physical capability we just mapped, whether a 1-series operator or an 8-series instructor, is entirely dependent on structural safety nets. Which brings us to Block 1, Part 3, Personnel Readiness and the Safety Net.
Yeah.
Chapter 11 frames benefits and programs not as workplace perks, but as system maintenance structures required to ensure assets remain legally deployable and psychologically functional.
Right.
The primary node for this personal preparedness is the Military and Family Readiness Center, or MNFRC.
The MNFRC is essentially the logistical support hub for the human element. Look, the machine cannot deploy a component that is distracted by extreme financial distress or unmanaged familial chaos.
We must audit the Transition Assistance Program, or TAP. TP is congressionally mandated, meaning it is not subject to Air Force waiver authority. The text establishes merciless timeline constraints.
Merciless.
Initial counseling and pre-separation counseling must be completed no later than, or NLT, 365 days prior to separation, retirement, or release from active duty.
Right.
The capstone event is mandated NLT 90 days prior to separation. Let us analyze the administrative friction here. What happens if this is delayed to 364 days?
The system flags delinquency. If a 5-skill level asset under your command initiates their TELAPE counseling at 364 days instead of 365 days, the database registers a failure of compliance.
It's that sensitive.
It is. This triggers notifications to the commander. It halts the airman's ability to smoothly out-process. Why? Because the system requires a full year to transition a highly institutionalized asset back into the civilian sector without causing socioeconomic damage.
So when you, the technical sergeant, fail to track that 365-day mark for your subordinates,
You cause a bottleneck in the unit's out-processing flow, forcing leadership to expend energy resolving a completely avoidable administrative error.
examining deployment briefings. These are mandatory for individuals with a firm deployment tasking of 30 or more days. They ensure the asset understands the theater constraints. But we must process the most critical vulnerability in personnel readiness: casualty assistance.
Yeah.
This is where system logic interfaces directly with human mortality.
This is the zero-fail mission of administrative data. When a casualty occurs, the primary next of kin, or PNOK, must be notified within a strict 12-hour window.
12 hours.
12 hours from the moment the heart stops beating, a casualty notification officer must be standing on the doorstep of the legal next of kin.
This absolute necessity requires the continuous, flawless maintenance of the VRAD, the Virtual Record of Emergency Data, accessed via VMPF, the Virtual Military Personnel Flight.
Right.
Furthermore, the financial parameters of casualty assistance are centralized in the Service Members Online Election System, or SOES. SGLI, Service Members Group Life Insurance, provides up to $500,000 in coverage.
Yes.
FSGLI, Family SGLI, provides up to $100,000 in coverage for a spouse and $10,000 for each dependent child.
Now listen to the mechanics of this failure.
Okay.
An airman gets divorced and remarried but fails to update their VRED and SOES. They deploy. A kinetic strike occurs.
Mm-hmm.
The 12-hour notification protocol activates.
Great.
The machine pulls the data you failed to audit.
Mm-hmm.
The casualty notification team arrives at the ex-spouse's house. Their current spouse finds out about the death on social media. And the $500,000 payout is legally bound to the individual listed in SOES, plunging the current family into immediate financial ruin. The system cannot execute a dignified notification if the diagnostic interface, the technical sergeant, has failed to enforce data accuracy prior to a deployment.
You must mandate VRED and SOES audits before every single departure.
Without exception.
Detailing leave management logic. The machine requires components to rest, but it tightly controls the duration. LeaveWed is the automated processing system.
Right.
Accrual occurs at a rate of 2.5 days for each month of regular Air Force status, capped at a maximum 60 days carryover at the end of a fiscal year. We must differentiate strictly between advance and excess leave.
Very different categories.
Advance leave is granted based on the reasonable expectation that a member will accrue the requested amount during their remaining service. It is a mathematical loan of time.
Excess leave, however, is a severe systemic shift. Excess leave is a no-pay status.
The parameters of excess leave are brutal. Entitlement to all pay and allowances stops. Furthermore, time spent on excess leave does not count toward the fulfillment of a service commitment.
Yeah.
If the member is injured while on excess leave, they will not receive disability pay.
Excess leave is the system temporarily suspending its contractual obligations to the asset. You are still subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, but the machine is no longer funding your existence, nor is it counting your time toward its operational metrics.
So as a 7-level manager, you must aggressively counsel any subordinate requesting excess leave. They are stepping outside the financial safety net.
Exactly.
Detailing non-chargeable leave constraints. Bereavement leave allows up to 14 days for the death of a spouse or child, provided the member has fewer than 30 days of accrued ordinary leave.
Right.
Emergency leave of absence allows up to 14 days of non-chargeable leave for a qualifying emergency, but it is granted only once during an entire career. The 14-day limit is highly specific.
The 14-day limit is a hard operational parameter. The system allocates exactly 2 weeks to absorb the psychological shock of a major life event.
And after 14 days...
After 14 days, the machine calculates that it has provided sufficient grace. It then demands a return to operational capability, or a transition to chargeable leave status, where the asset burns their own accrued time. The system regulates empathy through strict temporal boundaries.
This physical and psychological readiness is entirely dependent on fiscal stability. The system cannot deploy an asset who is financially compromised. Which brings us to Block 1, Part 4, Financial and Resource Logistics.
Right.
Chapter 12 connects personnel readiness directly to the defense budget. The foundational document for the individual asset is the LES, the Leave and Earnings Statement, officially known as DFAS Form 702.
The LES is not just a pay stub. It is a diagnostic readout of the asset's financial health. A technical sergeant must process these acronyms to manage subordinate fiscal fitness and detect anomalies before they result in unmanageable debt.
We will define the variables. BAH is Basic Allowance for Housing, calculated on local civilian housing markets to ensure the asset can secure shelter.
Right.
BAS is Basic Allowance for Subsistence, a non-taxable allowance offsetting meal costs, ensuring biological fueling. OCHA is Overseas Housing Allowance, a cost reimbursement-based allowance tailored to volatile international markets.
Yeah.
FSH is Family Separation Housing, payable when enforced separation from dependents occurs due to systemic requirements. FICA represents Federal Insurance Contributions Act, taxes for Social Security and Medicare. and FITW represents federal income tax withholding.
Now, you must understand why these are split into pay versus allowances.
Yeah.
Base pay is fully taxable. Allowances like BAH and BAS are non-taxable.
Okay.
This structure allows the system to adjust compensation based on geographic location, a high-cost area like Hawaii versus a low-cost area in the Midwest, without fundamentally altering the taxable income bracket of the asset.
That's efficient.
But when an airman fails to update their housing status after a divorce, they receive BAH they are not entitled to. The system will inevitably run an audit, discover the overpayment, and instantly recoup the funds, devastating the airman's finance.
Then you audit the LES to prevent this.
Exactly.
Analyzing retirement logic. The system uses long-term financial incentives to retain its 7 skill level managers. The date initially entered uniformed service, or DIUS, dictates the applicable system. We must contrast the 3 existing frameworks and explain the systemic shift behind them.
This shift in retirement systems reflects the Department of Defense mirroring civilian corporate financial structures to offload long-term pension liabilities.
System 1, High 3. For members entering service between 8 September 1980 and 31 July 1986, the formula is 2.5% multiplied by years of service, multiplied by the average of the highest 36 months of base pay. System 2, CSB, or Career Status Bonus, also known as REDUX. For those entering between 1 August 1986 and 31 December 2017, members could choose a $30,000 bonus at the 15-year mark in exchange for a severely reduced multiplier. 2% for the first 20 years and 3.5% for years after, applied to the High 3 average.
The CSB RDUX was a trap for the financially illiterate. It offered short-term liquidity, a $30,000 bonus in exchange for a massive reduction in lifetime pension payouts.
A bad mathematical deal.
A mathematically terrible deal. And many assets took it out of desperation or ignorance, costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars over their lifetime.
System 3, ERS, the blended retirement system. The critical cutoff date is 1 January 2018. Members entering on or after this date are automatically enrolled.
Right.
The multiplier is reduced to 2.0%. However, the system introduces a thrift savings plan, or TSP, with matching government contributions up to 5%.
This is the fundamental shift. The machine transferred the burden of investment risk onto the individual asset. The system reduces the guaranteed pension payout from 2.5% to 2.0%, but offers market-based matching funds.
So if an airman fails to allocate their TSP contributions into high-yield funds,
letting it sit in the baseline G fund, their retirement capital stagnates. As a technical sergeant, you must aggressively enforce TSP education.
The BRS introduces a specific, unforgiving constraint, the lump sum election. Airmen retiring under BRS may elect a lump sum payment of their pension. This request must be submitted to the Retirement Approval Authority no later than 90 days prior to the retirement effective date.
Missing this 90-day window permanently revokes the option. The system does not negotiate timelines.
Even by a day.
If your subordinate submits the paperwork at 89 days, the system rejects it. The financial architecture of their post-service life is altered because of a 24-hour administrative delay.
Connecting the individual financial dots to macro-level manpower. Chapter 12 outlines the UMD, the Unit Manpower Document. This computer-generated product lists all funded and unfunded manpower requirements.
Right.
It maps position attributes via functional account codes and personnel accounting symbols. The UMD is the physical manifestation of the PPBE process: planning, programming, budgeting, and execution.
The PPBE is the central nervous system of the Defense Department's resource allocation. It is how the machine decides what it will build, who it will hire, and what it will destroy.
The PPBE dictates the FYDP, the Future Years Defense Program. The FYDP is a 5-year blueprint updated twice annually, upon submission of the Program Objective Memorandum, or POM, and upon submission of the President's budget.
The FYDP summarizes forces, resources, and equipment. When a technical sergeant complains their unit is short-staffed and operating with outdated equipment, they are feeling the downstream effects of a POM decision made 3 years prior.
The budget cycle is that long.
Every billet on your UMD was fought for in the PPBE process. If a billet goes unfilled for too long, the system assumes you do not actually need it, and it will strip that funding in the next FYDP cycle.
How does the machine handle external components? We must analyze commercial services management and the logic of insourcing. Insourcing is the conversion of a contracted function back to Department of Defense civilian or military performance. The text provides clinical parameters for this conversion. The system reclaims the function if it is closely associated with an inherently governmental function, or if a contracting officer determines the contractor has performed poorly due to excessive costs or inferior quality during the 5 years preceding the determination.
Look, the text says inherently governmental function. What does that actually mean for you? It means the system will lease basic capability to the private sector. It will let a contractor mow the grass or run the dining facility.
Right.
But it will never let a contractor authorize a kinetic strike or classify intelligence or spend federal tax dollars. If a contractor's job drifts too close to the core execution of the state's monopoly on violence, the system reclaims that job.
And what about the 5-year quality to cost algorithm?
It is ruthless. If the private sector fails to deliver cheap, effective capability over a 5-year audit cycle, the system simply absorbs the capability back into the blue suit or civil service structure.
This concludes Block 1. You now understand the structural relationship logic of the machine. We initialize Block 2, the Level C block.
Yeah.
This is the applying phase, defined by leadership execution. We shift entirely from theoretical system understanding to real-world utility and the application of severe consequences. We will analyze 3 specific scenarios where technical sergeant failure leads to unit destruction.
Yes.
Part 1 focuses on the administrative wreckage of family care plan failure.
As a technical sergeant, you are responsible for executing Duty I 1342.19 DF A536 20908 in the field. This is the regulation governing family care plans. Yeah. It is not a suggestion. It is a mandate for deployment viability.
The mechanism of execution is the DF Form 357 Family Care Certification. The text explicitly mandates that single parents with custody or dual military couples with dependents must have a worldwide deployable plan.
Yep.
The plan must cover short and long-term situations, ensuring a rapid, seamless transfer of logistical and legal responsibilities to a non-military member.
So let us apply the scenario. A staff sergeant in your section, a 5-skill level asset critical to your shift schedule experiences, a change in marital status.
Okay.
A divorce occurs, granting them custody of the child.
This instantly creates a dependent care vulnerability.
According to the text, the staff sergeant has exactly 30 days to notify the commander or first sergeant of this change in status. Following that notification, they have exactly 60 days to produce the updated, fully certified family care plan.
Observe the clinical fallout when you, the technical sergeant, fail to monitor this timeline. You know the staff sergeant is going through a divorce. You decide to give them space.
Right. You want to be a good guy.
You do not demand the DA Form 357. The 60-day window expires. The staff sergeant has failed to produce the certified plan.
The consequence is immediate and algorithmic. The staff sergeant is instantly categorized in the system as non-deployable. The system cannot risk deploying an asset whose dependents lack certified logistical support. It creates a liability matrix the machine refuses to underwrite.
Because the TSGT failed to enforce the 60-day suspense, the TSGT must now process disciplinary action or initiate administrative separation for the subordinate.
Exactly. The commander is notified of the non-deployable status. You're ordered to begin separation paperwork. The unit suffers a catastrophic unprogrammed loss of a 5-skill level executing asset.
And the manpower requirement on your UMD remains.
You still have to accomplish the work, but the physical capability is gone. It'll take the equal system months to generate a replacement. Mission failure has occurred. Your unit's metrics will plummet.
It did not occur on a battlefield.
It occurred because you failed to oversee the administrative execution of a DEF Form 357.
Processing Block 2, Part 2. The GTCC delinquency cascade. The real-world utility requires the TSGT to oversee official travel expenses using the Government Travel Charge Card, or GTCC.
Right.
And enforce the split-disbursement feature in DTS, the Defense Travel System.
Split disbursement is a protective algorithm. It automatically redirects travel voucher funds directly to the GTCC vendor to pay the bill, preventing the airman from intercepting the funds and spending them on personal liabilities.
The application of the rule. A TSGT must ensure subordinates traveling for a PCS or a TDY, temporary duty, file their travel vouchers within 5 business days of return to their permanent duty station.
We apply the scenario. An airman in your unit executes an unauthorized cash advance at an ATM using their GTCC. They do this outside the permitted 3-day pre-travel window.
Okay.
They return from the TDY. They do not file their DTS voucher within 5 days. The bill remains unpaid. As the technical sergeant, you do not pull the weekly DTS delinquency report. You do not intervene.
Track the exact pathology of this cascading system failure.
Day 31 past due. The GTCC account is suspended by the vendor.
The airman can no longer travel. If a short notice deployment drops, you cannot send them. You have a non-viable asset.
Day 61 past due. The vendor escalates. They issue a due process letter directly to the airman, threatening salary offset procedures.
The airman is now experiencing severe financial anxiety. Their focus on the mission degrades, their error rate increases.
Day 75 past due. The first non-reimbursable late fee hits the account. The debt is compounding.
And then day 96.
Day 96 past due. The vendor submits the account to DFAS. Salary offset is now mandatory.
The system bypasses the airmen entirely and begins stripping their base pay. Their LES reflects a massive deduction. They can no longer afford their civilian housing.
Day 181 past due. The account is permanently charged off. The text notes that at 181 days, the cardholder is considered no longer eligible to be reinstated, even if the balance is subsequently paid off in full.
The clinical fallout reaches its apex here. A charged-off account is a severe financial derogation reported to federal agencies.
The airman immediately loses their security clearance eligibility. They can no longer access the secure networks or classified facilities required for their AFSC.
Because you, the technical sergeant, assessed the 5-day voucher rule as a minor administrative annoyance and failed to enforce it.
You have allowed a systemic cascade that resulted in a fully compromised subordinate. You have permanently stained your unit's readiness metrics, and you have destroyed a career.
Process Block 2, Part 3. Resource attrition and fraud, waste and abuse, or FWA. Real-world utility dictates the TSGT's role as a steward of the USA Equipment Management System.
Right.
A TSGT acts as a property custodian, accepting direct, legally binding responsibility for the accounting and reconciliation of items. We must clearly define the operational distinction between waste and abuse.
Important distinction.
Waste is the extravagant, careless, or needless expenditure of USI funds resulting from deficient practices. Abuse is the intentionally wrongful or improper use of USAF resources.
We apply the scenario. A piece of government-owned diagnostic testing equipment valued at $5,500 goes missing from your work center. You did not secure the locker. You did not maintain the logbook. This is a result of your deficient inventory practices. This is waste. Alternatively, an airman in your section utilizes a government vehicle to transport building materials for a personal side business. This is abuse.
The regulatory trigger is activated. Because the missing asset is valued over $5,000, the informal inquiry immediately escalates. The system bypasses local unit resolution and requires the initiation of a formal investigation using the DD Form 200, financial liability investigation of property loss.
Let's detail the clinical execution of the DD Form 200. The investigating officer reviews your deficient logbooks. The technical sergeant, as the designated property custodian, is found negligent. You face direct financial liability for the $5,500 loss.
Wow.
The system does not forgive administrative ignorance or operational distraction. The financial ruin of the custodian through wage garnishment is the system's preferred method of self-correction. It ensures future compliance through brutal negative reinforcement.
Furthermore, if this fraud, waste, and abuse is reported externally to the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, or AFODE, or the Inspector General, the IG, severe operational disruptions occur within the unit.
If an external report is filed, statutory whistleblower protections activate immediately. The IG safeguards the identity of the complainant. You, the technical sergeant managing the section, are deliberately locked out of the information loop to prevent any possibility of reprisal.
Right.
The work center halts. The formal investigation consumes all available operational cycles. Your personnel are pulled into closed-door interviews. Your capability to lead is neutralized while outside agencies dissect your equipment management practices piece by piece.
Your leadership rating, your operational credibility, is fundamentally dismantled because you failed to safeguard public property.
You are no longer the trusted diagnostic interface. You are the subject of the diagnostic scan.
This concludes Block 2. You have processed the theoretical logic and the practical application of catastrophic failure. We now initialize Block 3, actionable takeaways.
Right.
This is a rapid-fire execution checklist. It contains dense, application-ready points synthesized from the source text for immediate operational use by TSGT candidates.
Execute the checklist. Internalize these parameters.
Verify equal preferences immediately. The assignment system is blind without accurate user input. Audit your subordinates' data before the quarterly cycle runs.
Audit all DA Form 357s in your section. The 60-day administrative separation clock is merciless. If it expires, you lose the asset to non-deployability.
Monitor GTCC status via the APC, the Agency Program Coordinator. Enforce the 5-day DTS voucher rule to prevent the 31-day suspension cascade and the 181-day permanent charge-off.
Confirm SOES and VRD certifications annually and prior to any 30-day TDY. A 12-hour casualty notification fails entirely without this verified data, destroying the financial safety net of the survivors.
Track TSGT-eligible SDIs. Monitor the 8 Series developmental TENS, specifically 8A100 Career Assistance Advisor, 8B1000 MTI, and 8F1000 First Sergeant for future force distribution and leadership placement.
Differentiate strictly between advanced leave, which is mathematically recoverable time, and excess leave, which places the member in a civilian no-pay, non-creditable status that freezes system obligations to the member.
Initiate the DD Form 200 immediately for any lost asset valued over $5,000 or any classified asset regardless of cost to formally document financial liability.
The Air Force does not fail people. People fail to interface correctly with the Air Force. The regulations we covered today, from the 48-month time on station requirement to the 181-day GTCC charge-off to the 12-hour casualty notification window, are not guidelines. They are not suggestions. They are the structural walls of the machine. As a technical sergeant, you are no longer just a component inside the machine. You are the mechanic. If you do not know how the gears turn, if you fail to monitor the diagnostic readouts, you will be the one crushed when they jam.
Analysis complete. End of transmission.